taking forever.
Okay, good. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Jen Kelly. I'm joined by our panel of marketing guides. We've got Dan, Ken, Ian, and Paul. And today we're covering the pros and cons of multiple marketing experts versus one marketing team for your business. And just to lay the groundwork for our discussion in this episode, when we talk about marketing experts, we mean those people who have a talent or expertise in one thing that you're hiring them for. So some examples of that could be a web developer, a content writer, a graphic designer, an email marketing expert, a photographer. So these are specific experts you bring into your company to help you get one marketing thing done and out the door. Now, when we talk about a marketing team, we mean a coordinated group of people who are hired to work as your marketing team, and these are typically an outsourced team. So maybe you have a fractional CMO who brings in his or her team to ensure all the strategies are implemented. It could be a consultant who sells your company a year-long engagement of marketing services. But the difference being with the marketing experts, you, the business owner, are doing all the quarterbacking and strategizing to get all these experts to deliver what you need on time, on budget, on strategy, on brand. Now, when you hire the fractional CMO or the consultant with the program, they're typically going to come with a team ready to implement, and they're going to handle the quarterbacking, coordination, all the alignment to execute your marketing strategy. So the thing is today, with both of these options being implemented by millions and millions of businesses all over the world, which is the best one for your business? Which is the best way to go? So to start this off, Ken, I'm going to hit you with the first question. So from the business owner's perspective, what would be at least one pro and one con of going with the selection of marketing experts?
So this is a tough question for me because I have a very strong bias about this. But I think the best scenario for a business from a pro perspective is that you're a business that doesn't need a lot of sophisticated marketing. Maybe you can rely on creating a really effective referral program. Maybe there's something that you can do to build out a channel network, or that stream of golden goose referrals that just keeps coming in. So maybe you hire somebody to put that piece in place. Maybe if you're a gym or a restaurant, more brick and mortar local kind of a place where people make snap decisions, and there's not a long buying cycle, then maybe you hire somebody to do a point solution for you. But the problem is, most of the time, these people they're tool vendors is really what they are. They are not marketing people. They've got really great salespeople, but they don't really have any broader foundation of marketing. And so it's a one-trick pony. You better be able to write it hard, and it better be the right solution, or you could get really frustrated with the results. But again, I can think of numerous scenarios and situations where, and we even offer some of these point solutions for smaller companies who can't afford a big marketing budget. So not everybody's a tool vendor, but the inclination is that that's kind of the mentality that they have, and by tool vendor, I mean, even they're going to focus on their solution and they're going to push it hard. One con is that the more fingers you get in the pie, the more opportunity there is for conflict. And I think we're going to talk a lot more about this as we go. You definitely have to have the quarterback in place. That there has to be somebody who everybody buys in and says, this is the person, their vision, their priorities, their definition of quality, their definition of milestones all meets together. And everybody has to trust that from the bottom up and from the top down. So I think it can be really tricky. But I think, I don't know if I really answered both sides of those questions, but that's what I would have to say.
Yeah, I think you did. I mean, there is the pro and the con to it. For sure. And like you said, some businesses don't need the full-blown marketing department. They just need some certain help with, say, photography. So
Yeah.
it's it is really valuable, and it can work for a lot of different businesses.
Yeah. I guess
Um,
another really quick scenario is if you already have an in-house marketing team and you just need to bring in an expert to help you nail another channel, like you mentioned, photography, or maybe you
yeah.
need to hire somebody who really just specializes in like Google pay-per-click ads, but you already have the rest of the marketing team in place. I think that can work.
But
Can I
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think
go ahead, Ken?
just what I was going to just, second what Ken was saying here about that you really have to have someone that is the head person in whether internal or external. You have to have somebody who is essentially going to quarterback it, coach it, be the head person on top. Because if you don't, there's just a myriad of garbage that's going to happen. And one of those things is going to be a lot of territorial nutty things that are going to happen where, oh, we're a web company and this is the way we should do it. Oh, well, we're an SEO company. Oh, we're a content company. And it's all these little going on, and they're not going to get along, and they're going to try and bite off more than what they currently have. And it's going to get potentially really toxic. And guess what, business owner? You're going to get to manage all that. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Or not. And then
Or not. And then you can just let it all go to hell, and that'll be even more fun. So, I mean, that's really the thing where I think you got to have somebody who, again, it doesn't even matter necessarily at this point who that person is. You will define that, but you have to have someone who is not you, by the way. The business owner is not you managing it. No way. But you have to have someone in that group who is going to say, the buck stops here with me. I make the final decision, and I coordinate if necessary, but I am not going to get into territorial garbage, trying to do tug of war about, we're all trying to get up to the same place for this client. And so I think that's just so huge in this scenario.
And if I can springboard off of what both of you have said, because I think those are excellent points, I would say the one thing that we could add to that is that you talked about leadership, and leadership always goes back to the owner if you don't have somebody that is a marketing leader in your business. The other part to that is strategy. If you're a business owner and you don't have a marketing strategy to be the filter and the decision foundation or framework by which you make and your vendors in this scenario make decisions about what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, what reporting should be done, and accountability, just what everybody said already, you're going to be in deep water. The other thing I would add to that is actually it precedes all of this is if you're not an expert in these areas, how on earth do you hire the quote unquote experts in these numerous areas and get them to work collaboratively? That's really, really hard. You really do need somebody that understands all of these areas in order to bring them together and to work collaboratively.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good segue, because I was going to ask you, Ian. So, from a business owner's perspective, what would be at least one pro and one con of bringing in the whole team to have this marketing work done?
Yeah. So, the way, so for sure, all of us have a bias in this, and all of us have probably experienced both forms of what we're talking about, kind of a vendor approach, multi-vendor approach, as well as a consolidated, integrated approach. At least I have from my, corporate days of hiring marketing vendors, working with them. The one thing I would say is that if you select your marketing partner well, your integrated marketing partner well, you will have a team of highly trained experts implementing your marketing strategy every day, all aligned to the strategic plan that was developed and built with you. And they're going to be uniformly accountable in each of their respective areas, but also overall. So, the success metrics that you work out with your marketing partner, your marketing agency, your marketing consultant are actually what is driving every single action through that framework of a strategic marketing plan. So that's the pro. Like you will achieve your results way faster, and you'll actually achieve bigger results because you will have a marketing engine working on your behalf. Now, to flip it on the con side, because I've seen this scenario too, if you are not super careful about hiring the right strategic marketing partner, who puts strategy first, you have to make sure they put strategy first, or regardless of who you're working with, even a marketing consultant or a marketing agency can actually be kind of a facade to exactly the same scenario as a multi-vendor approach. Some agencies are just outsourced multi-vendor approaches with a really fancy facade, with very little accountability, with very junior people that are your contact person. I've been in those scenarios where I've worked with, hired those people or inherited them in some of my corporate experiences. And when you're choosing your agency, consultant, whatever it is, your marketing partner, you really need to understand who it is you're going to be working with on a daily basis, who's accountable, because you don't want these junior people who they might be called an account manager, or the term nowadays that's used a lot is account executive, which makes it feel like you're dealing with a higher level person, but you're not. And so, really they just become a go-between between you and kind of an internal multi-vendor approach. And the other thing I would say is, when choosing an integrated marketing partner, really dig deep into who they are, what their past experience is, talk to existing customers, talk to customers that have left less than stellar reviews for them, because you can learn an awful lot just looking at those reviews, but even reaching out to them and finding out what their experience was. But yeah, just make your decision carefully in either scenario.
Good points. Absolutely. Dan, I got a neat question here for you. So, yeah, I'm sure you've seen this. The business owner has, a favorite point solution person. Call them a writer, call them a graphic designer, but they bring your work in. So, for example, I know one of your offerings is the fractional CMO offering, right? You're coming in as a CMO, setting the strategy, making sure it all gets done. So what happens when you're brought in to do that, but they say, oh, but could you just use Susie over here as part of your team? How does that work? What's good and bad about that? So the business owners understand either they can do that or probably shouldn't. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I actually prefer it when it's like that. When you do have somebody who is already in place as, a marketing person of some sort. It doesn't even matter to me necessarily what the level is. Because when you do, you have a person who is probably in some kind of need. If it's one person, they're swamped. There are unrealistic expectations heaped upon them to do everything, basically. And here you are trying to complement what they do. And I think what I try to do really most of the time is, number one, I don't want them to think I'm here to take their job, because I'm not. I don't want their job. And I don't want them to think that I'm going to take things off their plate that they already enjoy doing. So one of my first questions out of the gate with them is, what do you like to do and what do you want to do more of? It's not to limit them. It's to say, what do you like doing? Because I don't want to take that off your plate, because you need all the allies you can get. And that person who is in place can be either your greatest ally or your greatest enemy based on what you do. And you want them to be your greatest ally by embracing them and saying, how can I help? How can I make your life a little bit easier. The thing that then we want to do is say, okay, we know what their strengths are and what they enjoy. Let's round this out with what else we think that this client needs. And I think it works very, very well. Like if they are, for example, if they're a coordinator or manager, we have an offering that's with the fractional CMO called Marketing Manager Mentor, where that person hasn't learned everything about marketing. So they need, mentoring throughout the year, even for a lot of different areas. Let's say lead gen, brand strategy. We want to up level them. And as long as the CEO is cool with it, then that's going to just make it that much stronger of a relationship. But even if they're higher up than that, again, if you're a VP or you're a director of marketing, I don't care. Like, again, I don't want your job. I want to help you spend more time doing the things that you enjoy doing and that you're strongest in. And then I'm your single point of contact. So I think it's actually preferable when you can have a marketing person in place. If they don't have that, no big deal. I mean, we can make it work, or we can hire somebody, whatever needs to be done. But one person is never, ever, ever going to be able to do all of the things required of marketing. That's just a fairy tale. And especially the person above them can't teach them that stuff anyway. They don't have the time, and they probably don't even know what they're doing for how to mentor them. They're probably just saying, post stuff on social media or, stuff like that so that they can seem active. That's where we can come in and be a great, great partner. So I think that's where that situation can be a good one.
And Dan, what do you do if the person doesn't fit the overall strategy? Like, what if they have an extraneous skill that really isn't adding to what the goals and objectives are, or they have a skill that would fit in, but the work they do actually doesn't align with what you need them to do? Like, how do you deal with that in those situations, or have you had to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened. And I think the best thing that you can do especially when they're not yet, let's say, to that skill level that you want, or they have a skill, but it's not perfect. I mean, you kind of have to do some mentoring to bring them along. I mean, the easiest thing in the world is to say, okay, get rid of this person or something like that. But what if that person is the boss's daughter? Or what if that person is, somebody that they've recently hired, and here you are coming in thinking, I'm just going to get rid of people. It doesn't work that way all the time. So,
but how do you include that in your, like, what if you discover this after you've already priced out your solution? Do you then go back to the business owner and say, this is looking a little bit different than we had expected. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to mentor this person. Is there an added fee for that? Or how do you handle that?
I give them the option to mentor them. Right. And I may say, it's a little bit more, but I think it's an incredible value if you can bring this person up.
Nice.
And so, yes, that can definitely be offered. Now, if the owner's like, well, I don't want to pay that, or I'm worried that they're going to take those skills and go elsewhere, which sometimes you hear, but that's a manager problem. That's a leadership problem. If you don't trust your employee with what they learn and you don't want them to get better, then that's not a marketing problem to solve. That's a leadership confidence issue that is above my pay grade. And I'd say, bring in this or that business coach, because you shouldn't be looking at that kind of stuff. I always err on the side of saying, believe in your people, believe that they should be mentored, and believe that if they leave, they're still going to say great things about you, which they will if you invest in them. And so, yeah, they don't have to be perfect, though. Like, I'm not expecting them to know everything, and I am expecting them to be open. And and I will tell you this: if they're not open and they push against me, then they will regret it. They will regret it. I will absolutely no, because I don't have time for that garbage. I'm not a therapist. I'm here to help them grow, and I'm here to help the business grow. And I'm not going to spend time, babysitting somebody who should be listening. So if they listen and they grow and they're into it, like a normal person who loves this industry should be, then I think it can go in only positive directions from there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Paul, as a business owner yourself, can you tell us some of your experiences, either hiring marketing folks for a point solution or hiring a whole team, and just let us know how both or either of those decisions has worked out for your company?
Well, I probably come from a somewhat unique perspective. My background's in technology, as you may know, but when I transitioned over to digital marketing, a lot of those skills transferred over, and I've always really worked in a team environment. So from a point solution, hiring different people kind of goes back to what Ian said, that if you don't understand these different skills and what these different people are supposed to do, how can you effectively hire them? And what I've noticed from a marketing team, a lot, not all, but a lot of marketing companies, that's what they do. And from a technological perspective, because there is a lot of technical things that have to go on the back end that you never see.
Yeah.
And they oftentimes don't have the expertise to do that. And so what happens a lot of times, they simply do what's best for them, not necessarily what's best for the client. Or they wind up outsourcing that part of it. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they know who they're hiring and what they're getting for that. Because the client may not know that they've hired this marketing team that is turning around and outsourcing stuff on their behalf. And like I said, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but you're trusting them to know what they're doing. So there's pros and cons either way. But if you hire a marketing team, you have to ask questions, I think, about who on your team does what and what is their experience. And if you're hiring the individual people, you still have to ask those questions, but you have to have a more in-depth knowledge of what the different functions are. So I guess that would be my perspective on that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, Ken, if the business owner decides to go with, a whole bunch of different experts, what happens when things go wrong? Who's to blame? Who's responsible? What happens in that scenario?
Well, I come from a background of being a project manager working on very large software development projects for the Department of Defense. And the Department of Defense and the aerospace industry got together because they build software where if it fails, people's lives are seriously at risk. So they left nothing to chance. They came up with this concept called the capability maturity model. And there are 5 levels to it. So the basic level is chaos. If you don't have management procedures in place, if you don't have repeatable processes in place, you are very likely to have catastrophic failures, or you're overly reliant on 1 or 2 key people who, if they decide they don't want to do their job that day, or they leave the company, or they're out with an illness, a lot of bad things happen. So so again, I would look at, if you're building a marketing team, and whether you're having a symphony of experts or whether it's an integrated team that you've either outsourced or you've built in-house or a combination thereof, you definitely need to have processes in place. And you need to have, repeatable processes. You need to manage, you need to be able to optimize those so that you can get what I call, again, this is a DoD kind of background coming out in me from, not that I was in DoD, I worked on DoD software systems, the force multiplier. If you have a symphony of experts, they're all doing their own thing and doing it to the best of their abilities, and maybe they're killer at it. You're missing the amplification effect, force multiplier of an integrated digital marketing strategy. So, as we've talked about, with Dan, I offer this as well, where, you've got to have somebody in that CMO low level, a fractional CMO, an in-house CMO, whoever it is, because otherwise, there will be problems. I mean, if you have somebody developing the website and then you've got a different SEO company, I don't know how the hell you can do SEO if you don't know the website.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got to do things that make sense. And ultimately, if there's failure that happens, I think you have to look at the leadership, because the important management pieces in place to be able to mitigate those risks just simply weren't addressed. And that's really the role of a fractional CMO or an in-house CMO, that has to be able to take on that responsibility and make sure that everybody is working in concert with each other to amplify their efforts. Google Ads feeds SEO. And if it doesn't, you're not doing it right, because Google Ads tells you what people are clicking on. They're telling you what the buyer intent keyword phrases are. If you're not creating content to put on your website to take advantage of that from an SEO perspective, you're missing a big opportunity. And you're only getting that one point solution. And so if you have different providers doing this and doing that, the likelihood that you're going to have a lot of stuff fall through the cracks is very great. And you may not even ever recognize it. So it may not even show as a problem. It's just going to be that you're getting less than you could have from your marketing investment if you don't have that coordinated, integrated approach.
Yeah.
And I would also say, this is just a good thing for any of you who are on the other side of that table as a provider among many. You are also looking at an opportunity here to potentially partner with these folks going forward if things work out. It's another potential strategic partner. If you like them and you align on a lot of things, that's happened, and you didn't even see that coming. But if you think that it's okay to nudge out somebody who's already there, you're never going to work with that person ever again in this lifetime. Like, nobody is ever that person will never want to work with you ever again and will never say anything good about you ever. So I think that's where you have to seize that opportunity to say, when things go wrong, you're not one of those who is going to go finger pointing at another provider. And I have seen that happen, and it's deplorable. It's just the worst professional behavior possible to say, well, it's not our problem, we did this. Oh, give me a break. Like, we're all adults. How can we fix it? How can we get back on track? How can we, figure out how we as different service providers can put our brains together for the good of this client? And you have to do that, because if you don't, and you point fingers and say, not my problem, we only do this, we won't work together ever after that. It's never going to happen.
One of the things too that really frustrates me, and I know Paul and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure you guys have probably experienced this as well. We do a lot of work with home remodeling related contractors. And, there are all these systems out there, whether it's a plumber, roofer, painter, kitchen, bath remodeler, whatever, that are a combination of maybe estimation, maybe project management, but they're largely operational systems. But they all claim that they're marketing systems. And, it's really hard to get some clients to say, I get it. This is really good to help me run my business. It's not great to help me grow my business. Now, there may be aspects that you can use and interface, with a real marketing system, but it's so frustrating because that point solution is there. Obviously, the customer has made a big investment, or the client's made a big investment. in that operating system for the operational side of their business, they have to do that. I mean, you have, if you're going to paint a house, you've got to have X number of steps laid out, or estimate, the size of the project. You've got to have all of those things in place. Marketing systems aren't going to have those things. But marketing systems are going to have marketing automation. They're going to have communication tools. They're going to be able to help you track leads, measure results. And so just people also need to recognize the tools for what they are, and don't force, I hate this phrase, but I think it's appropriate here, don't force a square in a round hole, a square peg in a round hole, which is what a lot of businesses try to do with forcing somebody to use an operating system as a marketing system.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hey guys, there was a term that was thrown out there early on. I think you said it, Ken, and it stuck in my mind so much. And I think for the people listening or watching, probably similar too. It was the term "a symphony of experts," which sounds beautiful. And as we were talking, I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, but a symphony of experts is not scenario one that we're talking about. It's actually scenario two, because without a musical score and a conductor, it's not a symphony. It's just disparate people making noise, right? And that's essentially kind of the two scenarios we're talking about. We're talking about a symphony, which is a good example of marketing, because there's all these elements that you need to cohesively bring together to make beautiful music and beautiful goals. And without a score, which is your strategic plan, your marketing plan, and your system to work in, and a conductor to get everybody, all the disparate parts working together in a beautiful manner, you just end up with noise and chaos and confusion. And, I just thought that was such an interesting metaphor, and it really stuck in my mind.
Well, I got to give credit to Jen. That was Jen's phrase. I borrowed it from her if she did not use it. Right, Ian. I mean, you may get lucky, and sometimes that noise may sound really good, and it's like, hey, that's kind of cool. But don't be fooled by that, because it's, it can slip away, and probably will slip away very quickly, and probably faster than you realize.
That's like jazz, jazz, you just get a group of people together and they have kind of a direction they're going, and they work cohesively together magically, right? But they're highly trained to do that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
They're doing it with a purpose.
Right.
Making
and they're
it look
listening
easy
to each other really well.
Right.
That's a key too, which doesn't happen in the other scenario.
I mean, and as the conductor, it's so obvious maybe to us, but it's not always to business owners. Is they may say, oh well, I'm going to bring in this person because they're good at this, and you're like blindsided by this because they don't think it's a big deal. Oh well, they just know this stuff, and I met them at a whatever event, and we're going to have them in.
Yeah. What
now? I mean, so don't think that any of us are good with that, because we're not.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
in the magazine, and it's like, you did what?
Yeah. So,
and even if that's a good idea, why didn't you consult us? Because we can take that offline strategy and turn it into an online strategy that allows you to track and measure it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the hard part of you being the conductor, is there are going to be times when you really have to say, no, that's not how we do this. And it doesn't get any easier, and it's not always, and they don't always agree with, they're not going to see it your way. And I think that's the hard part, is having been a creative director kind of person, you have to navigate between multiple parties who don't get it at all, like what you're trying to do. Like, they get their world, but they don't get everything that has to be done from a business outcome standpoint all the time. And you have to be the one to say, I hear what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, and you have to, bring it together. And they're not always going to like everything you bring together as a solution, but you're the person where the buck stops. And that includes them bring the client saying, what about this? I bought this tool, or I brought in this person. Okay, well, the client is not always right. if I haven't said that enough. I mean, so I absolutely am like, why? Like, and then they know that either they've done wrong or will navigate around it. But I demand transparency in every relationship. And when that happens, then that's a problem. And so as a conductor, you have to keep that in mind too.
And I think the key there too is to become to nurture, right? When we partner with businesses, we're nurturing a relationship with them where we become a trusted advisor and an extension of their own business. So we are in essence their marketing department. And so, once we've developed that relationship, the business owner usually asks us about stuff before they act. It doesn't always work that way, but more often than not, they'll say, "Hey, this came across my desk. What do you think?" And you're like, "Well, that could fit into the plan, but it's actually a lot of money, which we could leverage to greater ability over here. Or if you're really sold on it, we can make it work, right?"
Yeah.
But now they're pulling in their expert to actually scrutinize the option, which is fantastic.
It is. It is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also building on all the momentum you've already established for them too, right?
Right.
Their current investment. So Ian, what happens if the business owner hires the symphony with the conductor and then ends up having difficulty with the performance of your symphony? Are they stuck? What do you do then?
Yeah, well, first of all, what agreement or contract did you sign? Because that's, be careful and really understand the agreements before you sign them, because some agencies are really tough. They have really one-sided. I'm talking big agencies now that have lawyers on staff. The ones I've worked with in the corporate world, but we had lawyers on staff too, so it was okay. But when you're working with smaller agencies, it's really about communicating, right? You need to communicate well. You need to make sure that and I would always escalate as quickly as possible. So if the person you're dealing with is tone deaf and they're not hearing, because most of us, not everybody, but a lot of us soft pedal a little bit before we're feeling frustration with a relationship, and we might be soft pedaling it a bit to try to create resolution and try to bring the other person closer before we and if we don't get it, then we're like, well, this is stupid. Why am I soft pedaling when I should be a little bit more blunt? But I would say don't waste time. Try to resolve this as quickly as possible with the person that is able to resolve it within that organization. So I would say, the owner probably, or your account manager, but the account manager can, you can escalate past them pretty quick. But seek resolution as quickly as possible. If you feel like you're not getting resolution, I would say start looking for a new partner as quickly as possible, because it takes time. But during that process, I would, give it the last kick at the can with, your current agency to resolve the issue. Try to, it's all about communication, right? And getting resolution. And most respectable agencies are going to have a 30 or 60-day clause, which says, like, you can't bail on me today. You can't just say, I'm leaving. If you say that, then you're still committed for 30 to 60 days, because there's kind of monthly overlaps. There's things that your team is already working on for the next 2 months or whatever it is. So, it makes sense from both sides. But I would also say don't burn bridges, because the continuity, if you end up leaving the current team partner you're working with, that continuity, this as seamless as you can make it from one to another, you really want their help, the outbound team, to be able to help you transfer things over to the new team, because there are a heck of a lot of moving parts, and you do not want things to start falling through the cracks, or where's the credentials for our website, or where's the credentials for Facebook, or whatever it might be, right? You really do. And the only other thing I would add to that is, there's some teams or agencies. I see this in the higher level agency world a lot more, where they try to kind of give you golden handcuffs. They're like, our content management system for the website is the best in the world. Blah, 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 blah. You get sold on it. And then when you want to actually have somebody else work on your website, you discover that actually they can't work on their website because it's a proprietary system. So I would just say this is more like a thinking ahead. Watch for proprietary systems in the agreements. Ask those questions, because that'll, if there's no resolution, you want a seamless, smooth transition. I don't know if that answered the question. I went on for a long time there, but it was really what I was thinking when I heard that question, Jen.
You did go on for a long time. That's great.
Sorry.
That's great. No, not at all. Not at all. That brings me to the point that maybe for a different episode, we talk about contracts and getting into them, getting out of them, what certain things mean, and why the 60 days, why the 30 days. I mean, many of us contract people and software programs and that kind of thing. So
I mean, you need to realize if you're hiring somebody largely on an SEO strategy, you need to be prepared to give that time. And as long as they're executing the tasks that they say they are, that's a 14-month play, typically for most businesses. You need to realize that from and you'll have a ton of these tool vendors that are going to walk in and say, we'll get you on the first page of Google, in the first 30 days or in 6 months, whatever promises they make. Well, first of all, nobody can legally promise anything on Google. So if they make that claim, Google says, if you read Google's direction, they say, do not work with these people, because there is no Google search partner. There are Google advertising partners, but there's nobody who has the magic button to guarantee you're going to rank. So contracts is a really important thing to talk about. There are also really good subscription models that make it affordable for people to hire solutions where maybe they couldn't get that caliber of a solution because it would have required too much of a big upfront investment. So, there are definitely pros and cons. Just you've got to realize what it is that you're buying, and I know that's tough because but you have to do some due diligence to make that happen.
Yeah, it's a good point. Absolutely. So Dan, we've talked about the experts. We've talked about teams. Do you have an opinion on the best option for the business owners listening today?
Well, I think the best option, I'm going to be 100% biased here, is that first of all, there is one piece of smoke and mirrors that I think has to be addressed here, which is the notion of a one-stop shop. And I just think that is the biggest bunch of garbage ever, because they're selling convenience. There is nothing about everything under one roof that guarantees they're going to be any kind of good. Like, that's just convenient. Okay, well, we all belong to the same logo. That doesn't mean jack. So, somebody's going to be good and maybe even great in that organization, but they're going to be just okay in some other things, or maybe just good. So as a business owner, I think you got to, before you even say this structure or that structure, I think you have to say, what am I looking for as a strength in this partner that I'm going to bring in? And I'll give you an example. This has 2 services on it: brand strategy and content marketing. If you are trying to hire us for something other than brand strategy and content, we can work together, but we may not be the best fit compared to somebody else that you may want even more. And so I think no matter how much we say systems and we bring in a system, yeah, we do, but somebody's got to be good in something. Like, you can't be good in 17 different things at once. It's just not possible.
But your team can be.
Yeah.
That's the antithesis to what you're saying.
Right?
And also, I think if you're honest with yourself, though, you don't have to put it out there, but deep down, what absolutely hits a home run for you every time as a strength. And it's the other things, though, that you can do that then they come in and go, oh, I didn't know you could do that as well. So for example, people will go, oh, well, yeah, you do SEO too, or you bring in people for SEO. Yes, I do, or I bring in people. So it's kind of an order of the way people tend to think. And I think if they, I don't think they necessarily look at all those things the same. Like they'll have sort of a hierarchy of what they need most, and what is the potential partner saying about how they can help you. I think that's pretty big. And yes, they can have a team of different people that they can bring in, and that's fine and good. But I go back to this. It's always got to be, you've always got to feel comfortable with that point person on the other side. Fractional CMO, creative director, whatever. And they can't hand it off to, oh, this person who just graduated college will be handling your account now. No, absolutely not. It's got to be somebody who is senior and is going to constantly communicate with you. And what you see is what you get. And you're going to know that pretty quickly as you do a discovery meeting with them. So I'm biased, and I think it's a fractional CMO with people that they bring in who are experienced. And that way there's some chemistry. But don't think for 1 second throwing people in a room under one roof or under one logo guarantees that all of them are going to be great. No way. That's a convenience sell, and that is not good enough.
And yet, Dan, at least 3 of us on this call actually have teams structured like that, where we bring best in breed into our businesses and are constantly improving the best in breed. And it's otherwise the system doesn't work, right? The systematic approach to marketing doesn't work.
It's not about having a team or not, as much as what I tend to hear first in some places that say, you just said something that's above what they tend to say. You said best in breed. Yeah. They don't always say that.
Even if they do, though, it's, I think it is possible. And I think we do that actually every single day with our clients, because when the system is working and we're using our own people, it is a one-stop shop. Yep. There are things, I would never say there aren't things that we would say, hey, client, this isn't our biggest strength, so let's pull in a videographer, a photographer, whatever it is. We do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I would say for getting the marketing results that we're trying to achieve, we are a one-stop shop, because we do have all the expertise that we need, because that's how we've built our business, and that's how we produce the results we claim and do achieve.
You're qualifying it, which is good. And sometimes we don't always hear that qualifying.
Sure.
And that's part of the problem, is that the qualifying is not occurring. It's, well, here are all these bullet points of things we can do.
Right.
And by that definition alone, somehow that's good enough. It is not. And so I agree with you, actually, of what you're saying. You are saying this is the system and method for how we bring people in, versus we just threw everybody together.
Sure. Yeah.
Paul, last question for you, a little bit of a devil's advocate point of view here. Isn't it really about, a project manager that knows how to bring a whole team together? That seems to be like the invisible work we haven't really talked about. We've talked about SEO, we talked about writers, we talked about web and that kind of thing. But, the web developer isn't always thinking about, I wonder how this email marketing is going to work for this company. What are your thoughts on the project manager? Does every team need one? Is that the invisible, the invisible hand that makes this all work?
Well, what you just said is kind of the glue, if you will, that whether you as the business owner choose to hire different people, either you or someone within your business is going to have to coordinate those efforts. Whereas if you hire a marketing team, the idea is that you will have a point of contact, a fractional CMO, whatever, that you as a business owner deal with, and then they go deal with their team. But at some point, everything has to work together. Like you said, that the web person may not understand SEO. There's a lot of good web developers out there that don't know anything about SEO.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of content writers that don't really understand SEO or don't understand how that content fits into an overall strategy, into a marketing strategy. It's not just disparate pieces of content that you're throwing out there. There has to be some kind of strategy. There's a lot of good content writers that don't understand that. And I guess from my perspective, if you hire a marketing team, it's implied, at least, may or may not be true, that they communicate and kind of understand how this all works together. Whereas if you're hiring different people because they have expertise in these different areas, then it's really on you or your internal project manager, whatever term you want to use, to coordinate and make sure that the content writer understands how this works from an SEO perspective. And do you have the expertise to do that?
Yeah.
So it's not a simple answer, but
Yeah.
at some point, the right hand has to know what the left hand's doing, to use an old cliche.
Yeah. Again, Paul and I talk a lot because, we work together as a part of ChangeScape, but, we really talk about the fact that there are really, three key components to marketing today. And a lot of people skip over maybe one or two of these. They always naturally want to go to the creative, because that's historically what it's all been about. But you've got to have the technical and you've got to have the project management. They have to work together. Those three are the legs of the stool. And, the technical, there are 10 gazillion marketing tools and platforms that you can choose from. Every one of them has their own little nuances. You need to understand how to use these to get them to talk together, work together, whatnot. The more things that you're involving with your marketing efforts, the more it requires project management and potentially technical. So there's integration. There's obviously, managing a team of people working on each and every one of these things, and then obviously it's all powered by the creative. There is no marketing without the creative, obviously, but the creative is going to be, again, I used the phrase earlier, but it's going to be amplified if you've got the project management and the technical clicking together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. One thing I just want to add before we go is that
sure. Yeah.
I think the people that, whether you are hiring multiple marketing experts or one marketing team, don't think for 1 second that you can just hire them and then set it and forget it. I think that's sometimes a trap that business owners fall into, is they think, well, they got this. No, you get in here, you're part of this too. You're part of this status meeting. You're part of maybe a blog intake or other things, because that's just not going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to be something where marketing lives on an island and you hear about it once a quarter. That's just not good business practice. And so you have to be somewhat invested. You don't have to attend everything or know every single discussion, but you have to be in the loop. You got to be accessible. And other than that, though, what our expectation, at least in this business, is that we don't want you to do the work. You are not a writer. You are not an SEO person. I don't care what you wrote back in college. Like, you are not a marketing person once we step in the room. So what you can do for your business where it needs you most, among other things, may be sales, so that nobody may be able to represent your business better than you. So every minute that you think that you're a blog post writer or that you're something else than that is another minute that you've taken away from your new business activities. So it's a nice balance that you got to do, but we've often achieved it by stating those parameters and roles of how that relationship is going to go.
Very good. Very good. With that, thank you. I'm going to stop y'all here. I think we could talk all afternoon about this. Thanks very much for your points. And business owners, thanks very much for joining us. And we'll see you next week on the next episode.